Hey people, I usually stay away from stuff like this. I usually try to avoid talking about politics because I don't enjoy the headache that comes with talking about politics. But I have just learned about something that has happened recently that makes me feel like I need to talk about it. I need to use my voice, and I'm going to need to start using my voice about this sort of thing more, because what has happened recently in Chicago is not okay. It is dangerous. It is very scary. It's incredibly scary. And things are happening a lot faster and a lot worse than I ever actually thought possible. And so I'm going to read the news article that I read, at least most of it, and I'll offer just a little bit of commentary. But I just want to read the article to show what's going on and to show that history may be repeating itself. I really wish it wasn't. I wish I didn't have to say that. I wish I didn't have to think that. History may be repeating itself. And so I will give a brief rundown very fast. In Chicago, there are these apartment buildings called the South Shore apartment buildings. And they're owned by this lady, and they're pretty run down. Like, they're pretty run down. They're not maintained well. And they were known, I guess, to be where a lot of Venezuelan immigrants settled when they came here however long ago. I'm not very educated on that, but apparently there was some type of, I don't know if you'd call it a movement or what, but a lot of Venezuelan immigrants came here, and I guess that, like, this apartment building was one of the buildings that a lot of them kind of settled into or found themselves living in. So it doesn't really explain how that happened. Like, if legal family members were getting them apartments and then illegal immigrants or undocumented people were staying there under legal people's names, or what. It doesn't really explain that part. But 300 ICE agents swarmed this apartment building from helicopter, like dropping down onto the roof and stuff. And in this 130 unit apartment building, they arrested, I think it said, a total of 37 individuals. And I'm willing to admit that that is a significant number. But I also think that you have to look at the fact that out of 130 units, only 37 people were arrested for what they were, like, there for. And we don't even know for sure if all 37 people actually are illegal or have actually done any crime or anything like that. We have no idea at this point. But if they had just raided it and they got the 37 people, it would still be pretty bad. It would still be not good. I wouldn't like it. I would still think that this is dangerous. But what makes it to the point for me that it feels like we are screwed if we keep going this way, like normal, regular people, everyday working class citizens, like everybody who is not the elite, who is not the ultra wealthy and ultra powerful, we are screwed if this is the way that we're going to be treated. Because ICE did not just detain the 37 people that they were apparently looking for. They detained American citizens. Apparently the order was not to detain or zip tie women and children. it was sort of unclear from the way that the article was written whether or not that was actually followed appropriately. So I'm not sure if women and children actually were included or not included. They were not supposed to be, but I'm not really sure from the way the article was written. But they still did detain men. They detained American citizens who had done no crime, who had no warrants, and they detained American citizens with no warrants and no legal reason to detain them. And they put them in zip tie handcuffs, and they marched them out of their homes after kicking in their doors. And then they put them in unmarked vans without telling them why. And sure, after a few hours, these people who were not being arrested completely, who were allowed to go afterwards, yeah, they got to go. They got to go back to their destroyed apartments. And there's no talk about some relief fund or assistance or anything to these people that ICE has destroyed their homes. And to me, I would think that that's just especially in America, if the government is going to do something like that, especially if they're going to claim it's for the greater good, because that's what's going to be claimed is well, there's so many illegal immigrants or whatever in that building. It was for the greater good. It was a worthwhile sacrifice to sacrifice the rights and the dignity of American citizens by putting them in zip ties and arresting them. That is what fascism looks like. And so, anyway, I am fully freaked out. I'm about to start 3 different jobs. I have a full-time job that I'm starting on the 13th. I start my orientation. And then I am supposed to be doing dishwashing for a few days a week to get some extra hours, and then I'm going to be doing cashiering. So all in all, I'm working 32-ish hours, and then 15, and then another 10 or so. I'm trying to work a full 60 plus hours. I'm a hard worker, but people like me are going to be branded as lazy scourges of society because that's what's easy to write. That's what's easy to make it seem like I'm just a horrible person. I'm a parasite to society. When in reality, I am one of the hardest working people I know, and so is my boyfriend. I'm a little bit just speaking for myself right now. It's kind of hard to know what's coming. I kind of feel it's hard to have the motivation that I have right now to make my life better when I'm not even sure if I'm gonna be able to keep living a free life. If any of us are going to maintain our rights, if we're going to maintain the lives that we've known as Americans and the freedoms that we've known as Americans, I don't know if we're going to be able to maintain that. I don't know if we're going to get to keep that for much longer. And so it makes it a little hard for me to want to better my life and to do anything. And I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to keep fighting for better. And I'm going to keep hoping that things don't keep getting worse. But this is scary. This is crazy. This is really, really bad. At first, when I started reading the article, I thought, they went in, they knocked on every door. I don't know. I didn't think it would be done like this. I didn't think kicking in every single door, detaining every single person for a set amount of time, even if it is only just a couple hours, I would lose my mind if people did that to me and I was put in an unmarked vehicle and I wasn't even told why. I wasn't even told this is going to take a couple hours. You'll be free to go afterwards. We're not after you. If I wasn't even told that type of information, I would fucking lose my mind. I would be like, what the fuck? Like, it would be incredibly scary. It would be even scarier than it is for me now just looking in. I don't even know what else to say. I don't really have anything else to say. Here is the article that I read. I will read it. And I hope people start seeing I hope the people that haven't been able to see it for what it is, I hope that they start waking up. And I hope that people realize that we're about to have, like, mass graves. We're about to have, like, mass tragedy. We are heading towards mass tragedy right now. I've heard people making jokes about Jews lately out in the open. I've always heard gay jokes. I've always heard anti-LGBT rhetoric. I've always heard that kind of thing. But that has become way more rampant lately, and people have become way more emboldened to spew hate towards LGBT people. And that was to be expected. But what surprises me is I have been hearing people and reading stuff online disparaging Jews. And I've heard people straight up say that the Jews are to blame. They've done this to themselves. And call Nazi Germany and the gas chambers and what happened to Jewish people in World War II. I've heard and seen people outright say that the victim card has expired and no one cares anymore. And I've heard people disparage Jewish people. I never heard that growing up. When I was like 10 years old, up until I was like 15, I literally had never ever heard anyone ever say anything bad about Jewish people. I only ever heard about the Holocaust and what happened to Jewish people and the reason why it's dangerous to think the way that people thought back then. Like, Jewish people control the world. Jewish people control all the money, like secretly underground or something. But the thing is I've heard that type of thinking resurface, and the stuff that they were saying in World War II is being said again. The same type of rhetoric, the same type of propaganda is happening again. I just hope people can wake up. And I hope that we're not about to enter the next tragedy. It's messed up. I don't have anything else to say. Do your best to take care of yourself, and bye. A now renting sign outside touts granite countertops. Inside, residents are trying to make sense of the raid that made their already neglected building even worse. South Shore. He's an Army veteran, now retired after 3 decades working for the U.S. Postal Service. Federal agents pounded on the door of his South Shore apartment at about 2 a.m. Tuesday. I told them they must have the wrong apartment, the man said. But armed agents busted open many doors after arriving in U-Haul trucks to raid the 130-unit apartment building at 7500 South Shore Drive. They woke up residents to handcuff them with zip ties and lead them into unmarked vans. Roderick Johnson, a U.S. citizen, said he heard people dropping on the roof before FBI agents kicked in his door. This is a U.S. citizen. So at first I was like, is this an apartment building that is housing illegal immigrants? Like, is this some type of like illegal immigrant housing situation where somebody owns a company or something and they're putting immigrants up to live, to work under the table? Because that type of thing is exploitative. It's bad for everyone, really. It allows immigrants to be taken advantage of a lot, like really badly, like working nonstop and getting almost nothing for it, because what are they going to do about that? But when I got to this part, it's a U.S. citizen. These are U.S. citizens. This wasn't an apartment building filled with them, with illegal aliens or anything like that, undocumented citizens. These are American citizens who are documented and who are legal and who were born here, probably, being treated like this and being zip-tied. He was stuffed inside a van with his neighbors for what felt like several hours until agents told them the building was clear, he said. They didn't tell me why I was being detained, Johnson said. They left people's doors open, firearms, money, whatever, right there in the open. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said federal agencies arrested at least 37 people in the operation at the building, which they claimed is frequented by members of Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. About 300 federal agents, some landing on the roof from helicopters, descended upon the building, according to news station, which was invited along for the operation. Oh, so news station was invited to go along, and so they were there. The report didn't mention women and children to be among the detained, said Brendan Lee, a spokesperson with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. Organizers worry that people were taken without warrants. These were families with their children escorted in the middle of the night, Lee said. This administration is using PR efforts to try and turn communities against their neighbors. Residents said the building had become home to Venezuelan immigrants. The raid saw people's apartments turned upside down, citizens held for hours, and their neighbors taken away to unknown places. Belongings were stolen from apartments after the agents left the building open. The Army veteran who went blind recently and asked us not to use his name said the agents moved on to the next apartment after coming to his home. I was trying to protect myself, he said. My nerves were shook. And can you imagine that? You are a legal citizen. I understand that they are saying they arrested over 30 people from this building. Well, there's 130 units. So I'm guessing that that's about at least 100 people, 100 units that had nothing to do with this. So it's not even like a half and half situation. It's not even close. The majority of people at this apartment building were not the people that they were looking for, and they still detained them. And like this is saying, detained them without warrants. In my opinion, they detained them without a legal basis, and this cannot be happening. This actually is so dangerous, and we are entering very dangerous territory. This wasn't even a situation where you can say it was a sacrifice for the greater good, because the majority of the people in this building, it sounds like, were not Venezuelan immigrants or gang members. It sounds like there may have been, I'll admit, a substantial amount of people who frequent this apartment building who maybe are related or something. Maybe, because I know nothing about the 30 arrests that have been made. But to detain and affect U.S. citizens who have done nothing wrong in the name of what this is, I cannot even believe this right now. This is not okay. By Wednesday afternoon, the building appeared largely abandoned by residents. Unsigned waivers allowing DHS to disclose records about you to a third party were on front gates near Know Your Rights flyers. Broken windows scattered the property. Anyone could just walk in. Dan Jones stood outside with police officers to file a report after his valuables from his mattress and his iPad down to his air fryer were stolen after agents broke his door. Jones slept at an aunt's house following the raid and returned to find clothing and garbage that wasn't his all over his apartment floor. Sorry, that took me a second to understand. So the dude comes back home after being raided and everything, and now there's garbage and shit everywhere that wasn't even his. A small moving crew said they had been hired after the raid to clear out now vacant units, but didn't say by who. Doors were boarded up. In one room, there were zip ties and bloodstains on the floor next to baby shoes. Flies swarmed around open fridges. Water damage had caved in ceilings. Strollers and air conditioners and more things left behind blocked the middle of dark hallways. The lobby elevators were broken with their buttons perpetually lit on the down arrow. There is a strong odor everywhere. Jones said the building's dirty conditions predated the raid, but this was the worst he'd seen the place. It was the first of the month and his rent was due. It looks like hell, Jones said. ICE really just a gang. Jones said he's been cordial with the Venezuelans who moved onto his floor. They were cool people, he said. We took it upon ourselves to at least keep it clean over here. So the person who owns the property is also kind of a POS, it sounds like, and she doesn't keep up with her shit, and she lets people live in bad conditions in order to gain wealth. So she sounds like an awful person as well. So this Jones man, Mr. Jones here, yeah, I mean, I would cry too. Jones's eyes welled with tears as he looked around his destroyed apartment. He wants to move. Rebuilding will be harder. My place was nice, he said. And you know what? For him, it probably was nice. And you know what's so sad? In this world, people like him and people like me, people like us, where all we can afford is an apartment and all we're concerned about in life is just trying to have a home and trying to have a safe place to come back to every night. Because even though we have to work for everything and life is harder for people who are working class, and live in apartments like this, run down apartments like this because they have no choice. Even though we have to live in buildings like that, and even though we have to deal with stuff like that, people like us still just want a home. To us, it's nice if it's shelter. If we're able to like relax and get comfortable, that's all that we need. People like us who are hardworking and who have nothing and who have never really had anything, like our home is literally all that we have. And so these people destroyed what I'm guessing is probably one of the only things that this person has in their life. Their home. On top of their personal items. Can you imagine pictures, photos, memorabilia, like any of that destroyed by ICE? And this person wasn't even illegal. He had nothing to do with it.